Today I decided, sorry about all my squeaky chair. Today I decided that I wanted to do some bugs for the garden. We're always focusing on flowers, but if you add some bugs or some insects or even a lizard or a snail or something to some of your floral watercolors, that gives it a little bit more life. So I've just got a ladybug, a butterfly, and a bee. I didn't want to get too many going. I thought about adding like a dragonfly and a spider, and maybe I'll do that on a different video. I'm also keeping it simple. I've got my Cotman Sketchers box here, and it just has like the warm and cool of each primary color and the secondary colors. Not all the secondary colors, but it just has some warm and cool colors of the primaries and the white and some earth tones. So it's a good little starter kit for any artist that is not that great with, or not that familiar, let's put it that way, not that familiar with watercolor. So we're going to use that, and I kept my bugs simple. So the first thing we're going to do is our ladybug, and now this is like a head, not a head down, but above, I guess we're looking above her and seeing her from the top view. Now I'm going to take some of my warm red and a little bit of my cool red and mix it, because that'll give it more of a, it won't be too orange, but it won't be too blue. It'll be more of a true red, so to speak. And then I am just going to wet my little ladybug's body down. With some clean water. We're just going to use a little clean water on that. Wet her whole thing down. I'm going right over the dots that I have drawn on, because her dots are black, so black will cover the red really easily, so I'm not going to get too stressed about that. And then I'm just going to drop those two reds that I mixed together into the wetness. Like so. And I'm going to let some of that be a little lighter, like some highlights on her wings. So I'm not going to cover all of the white of the paper. And I'm going to come back and pick up a little bit more of this red. And then we're going to let that dry, because we don't want the black to bleed into that red. So we're going to let that dry. Let me put just a little bit more red here at the bottom. And we're going to start on this sort of side or 3/4 view, and we're going to do the same thing. Wet those wings. Uh-oh, our cheerleading section is chiming in. A little Dorian, he's our little hype man. We love him. And we're just going to drop that into the wet, onto the wet paper. Now this, if you're new to watercolor, this is called wet on wet. And I love this technique for the spontaneity. It's just spontaneous. You can add 2 or more colors into the wet washed into that water, and it will mix and mingle with those soft edges, and it just looks so pretty. And I'm just adding a little bit more of the paint to the bottom here, and a little bit right where the 2 wings meet. Now we're going to let those dry. While those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and start on my little bee here. So he's going to have some yellow, a nice yellow fluffy body. And I'm just going to get some of this warm yellow here. Now if you are part of my Patreon, if you're a patron, you will get all of the outlines and the exact colors that I used for this. So that is part of their perks. They get the supply list, the outline drawings to go along with the video, so they can practice on their own. Now I just did a layer of that really like sort of lemony yellow, and now I'm just going to take some of that darker yellow. It's a yellow ochre. And I'm just going to drop it in there, here and there, just to give it a little fuzzy look while it's still wet. And that's going to give that sort of fuzzy look to the bee's body here. And we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to take that same yellow, and I'm just going to do a really watery wash on his stripes. We're going to come back and do some layers on there to get it to look more like the fuzzy bee that he is. So I'm just going to go ahead and put those stripes in there really watery. And I think, no, I'm going to leave that to dry. We're going to do the same thing to this little guy. We're going to put that wash of yellow onto dry paper. So this is wet on dry. We're doing a yellow wash onto dry paper. And then again, we're going to get into that yellow ochre. And we're just going to sort of put those dots in there, wet on wet, so that it'll look a little bit fuzzy when it dries. And then we're going to get that lighter yellow and of course do the stripes. Just doing this sort of watery wash of stripes. There we go. And you might want to erase your marks a little bit. I've got my marks a little bit dark, my pencil marks, just so that you can see what we're doing. Now we're going to let those dry. And I showed you on the planner video, an easy way to do butterflies. But we're going to do this butterfly a little bit more sophisticated or complicated, whatever you want to call it, way. So I'm going to take this really pale yellow, and I'm just going to paint in each one of these sections. And this is wet on dry. We're doing a little wet on dry. And then we are going to take a little bit of this yellow, this sort of warmer yellow, and just pick up a little bit of that red to make an orange. A nice orange. And while this is still wet, we're going to charge that orange. This is called charging or wet and wet. You can do two colors like I told you when we started our ladybug, that you can add more colors to a wet and wet mix. And I'm just going to let those two colors mix and mingle right on the butterfly, right in those sections. I'm going to continue that in each section. Now you don't have to do it this way. I'll do the easier way on this one. We'll do the more sophisticated, a little bit more complicated on this one. And then of course we put our yellow, we come get some orange, and we want to drop that in there while it's still wet and just let those mix together. And we're just going to continue doing that on each little section. Using wet on dry, where we put in some wet watercolor on dry paper, and then we do wet and wet where the yellow wash is wet and we are putting in some wet paint right into it, and that just helps it blend smoothly. You get really soft edges, it's spontaneous, and it's really pretty. And I'm just going to continue to do that. Now I'll let you watch. I'll be quiet a minute. And I'll let you watch as I just continue to fill in these spaces and then drop in some orange. think I'm gonna go a little bit darker with these outer ones. Oh wait, I gotta match them. This one right here's gotta be matched to the other wing. Can't have some catty-wonka wings. So there. But I think I'm gonna do like a darker, deeper reddish orange with those. So I am going to get some of that warm red and the warm yellow, and that's going to make a really nice orange. And I am just going, I think I'm going to do wet on wet. So let me get this wet and pick up that orange and drop it in there. And just continue to do the same thing around the edge with just some clean water. Mine's not that clean, but we're going to pretend that it is. We're going to have those be just a little bit darker. And it just gives it a little bit of interest, I think. And up here too. Alright, let's let that dry. And then we will work on this butterfly. Now this butterfly, I'm going to show you the easy way. We're going to wet all of the sections. Just wet them all together. We are going to come in there with that pale yellow. Just like that. And then we're just going to come in with the orange. And also drop that in there. And just let the colors go where it wants to. Do the same thing with this. We're just painting in that yellow. We don't care for getting out of the lines. And then we're just dropping in some of the orange. Do the same thing over here. We're just going to wet those areas. And again, we are not worrying about going outside of the lines of that we drew. And then drop the orange in. We're going to let those dry and we're going to come back to our ladybug. So come here, ladybug. We are going to get a little bit of this cooler red. And we're going to add just like a teeny bit of this blue into it just to darken it up some. And that's going to be our shadow color for her wings. So we're just going to do a little line to separate the two wings. And we are going straight onto dry paper, and then I'm just going to take my brush with clean water and just soften those edges. So we're going straight onto the dry paper, and then we are rinsing our brush and taking clean water and just softening those edges. Do a little bit at the top of the wings. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing with that same mixture. We're going to go right down the center of the wings where the two wings meet. I'm going to leave that like that. I'm not trying to blend those edges out on that. I want that to be a crisp edge. And then right around the bottom here, we're going to go with that darker color. And then we're going to clean our brush and soften that edge just a little bit. And we might just do a little bit of shadow here. A little bit right here where the body and the wings meet. I'm just cleaning up that edge just a little bit. Now I'm going to try to mix a black color. And what I'm going to do, I've got my red here. I'm going to take some of this dark brown here. Then I am going to take some of the blue, and there we go. We almost have a black. Let's see if you can see it a little bit better. So that's just some of that red mixture with some of the cooler blue, or the warmer blue, excuse me, the warmer blue into the red, and then a little bit of that sort of burnt umber. And we got us a nice dark color. And it's pretty thick. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want to do it that way. I've changed my mind in the middle of executing. I'm going to take some clean water, do a little clean water on the head, and then pick up some of that black and just let it go around the edges of her head. And just let it sort of blend itself into the water, leaving a highlight. I can add just a little bit more around the edge here. And then we are going to do her backside. She has her little backside sticking out from her wings. Put that out there. And then we can just paint in her little feet, her little legs. And those are just little sections, and we're not trying to do too crazy. I mean, we're not trying to make them too realistic. So we're just doing little sections, like painting little long sausage shapes coming out from her body, and just trying to get in those segments. Just like that. And I'm going to take a really thick mixture of this dark color that we're trying to call black. It's really not as black as it could be, but we are going to take that dark mixture right below her head, and let's give her some little antennae. There she is, looking so cute. Now let's just paint in her little dots. And if you want to, you can leave like a little highlight in there inside of the dots, some of that little red shining through, maybe a little bit of reflection happening. We don't know what's happening. And they don't have to be perfect circles. Don't get too upset if your circles aren't that perfect. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Just do the best you can. These are just practice. Oh, look, I'm smudging because I'm dragging my hand through. But again, these are practice. This is just something, for you to work on your watercolor skills with. And I do highly recommend adding, some bugs or some snails or some kind of wildlife in some of your floral paintings. It just gives it a little bit of extra realism. It just makes them look a little bit more interesting. So now we're going to come over here and do the same thing. Now this ladybug's a little bit different. She's a little bit more realistic. We're going to wet that thorax down. We're going to take some of this color, and we're just going to go around the edges just like we did on our other little fella. We'll just let that go, and then while that's sort of mixing and mingling, we can just paint the little sections. They're just sort of little sausage sections. Look like little long sausages. To her legs. Kind of poking out a little bit. If you want to, you can take that dark color and go right down the back, her back, and let it be a little bit deeper of a shadow where those two wings meet. I'm just going to go ahead right on dry paper. We're not doing the wet on wet for her, the very tippy top of her head. I'm just going straight onto dry paper. And then I'm just going to do her little antenna. And go ahead and do her little pattern dots. I'm just making my paint a little bit thicker. It's getting a little bit too runny, so I just mixed a little bit more paint into that wet spot on my palette just to thicken it up. Now don't worry, we're not done. Even though our little ladybugs look done, we're not completely done with them. We're going to let these dry and work on our butterflies. Alright, so we're going to leave that to dry, and we're going to come over here to our little butterfly. We are going to wet her body, or his body. And then we're just going to drop in some of this blackish grayish mixture, but it's really watery, so we're just going to drop that in. And I'm going to make this mixture, this black mixture, a little bit thicker, so I'm just really like getting a lot of pigment out of the pan of the blue and the brown because I want it to be thick. And then I'm just going to start painting in the black areas of our butterfly. Make sure that that yellow and orange is completely dry before you do this. If you don't, you're going to have a mess. So make sure it's completely dry. And you just paint around your spots. And I am using a number 2 silver black velvet pointed round. We got half of our butterfly done. She is looking rather spiffy. And we just get these other wings. And you can do this with a marker, like a black fine liner, if you don't want to use your brush, if you don't feel confident that you can do this tiny line work, or you want the black to be even, you know, darker, richer, deeper. You can use black from right from the tube or from the palette, or you can use a marker, a fine liner that's waterproof. There's a lot of different ways you can approach it. Let me mix up a little bit more. And the reason I'm not wetting the paper first before I put these black lines and black sections in is because I want to have more control over the watercolor. So if the paper is dry, the watercolor is not going to spread out. This is for beginners that might not know this, so I'm just giving you a little tip here. If you don't want your watercolor to just spread all over really quickly, then keep your paper dry and then just paint directly onto dry paper if you want to have better control. If you want that spontaneous, soft mix look, then you can go with wet on wet. But anytime I want to be able to have my watercolor stay where I put it, then I go with dry paper, and I don't have like a really wet brush either. So it's just controlling the amount of water, knowing what effect you want to get. Like here, I want it to be thick and I want it to stay in the same spot, so I'm just doing straight onto dry paper. And then I am going to make his antenna here, and you can do a little bit of, you know, to make him look fuzzy, just do a few little brush marks. I'll give him some eyes up here. There, he's cute. I like that butterfly. He's a cutie pie. And we can do the same thing with this one. I am going to wet the body because I don't want the body as dark as the wings. And I'm just going to drop a little bit of that black color in there. And then I'm going to pick up this thick mixture of black, although it's really not a true black. But it's not as flat as a true black. It looks a little bit more, to me, pleasing to the eye because it has some color in it. It's a chromatic black. It has a little bit of color in it. There. And you just do the same thing. There's nothing to it. These are so simple. Again, if you're part of my Patreon, one of my patrons, you will get this if you are at least in the $3 tier. I have different tiers. So $3 and up, you will get the outline of this. If you're $5 and up, you'll get the whole supply packet with some tips. Some tips to go with it. The outline drawing, the whole shebang if you are a $5 and up patron. You'll get the outline drawing if you are a $3, which is called my peekers. I love my peekers. I got my peekers, I got my dabblers, I got my creators, I got my bundlers. They all get different perks depending on what level, what tier they have. And even my free people get perks. They get some nice freebies too. So you can become a free member and still get some bonus content related to my YouTube videos. So come on over. You don't have to, you know, spend money. You're still welcome, and you'll still get some free content. You'll get some bonus content. It just won't be as much as obviously the paid members, because that wouldn't be fair to the paid members, but you will get stuff at least once a week. You'll get something. Alright, we're almost finished. And you see where I smudged right there, but this is just a practice. Oh, you know what I forgot to tell y'all? This is a 140-pound cold pressed paper. It's Fabriano Artistico. Now I'm going to come back with my body and do some little dots just to make him look fuzzy. Give him a little eyeball. And then of course do his little antenna. Now I'm not done with these yet. I'm going to let those dry. I'm not done with any of those yet, but I am going to let those dry. We're going to start working on our bee here. I'm going to wet his head. His head is going to be black, but I'm going to wet it first, and I'm avoiding that eye. I want to avoid the eye. Got a little too much water, so I'm just sort of picking some up. It up with my brush and dabbing it off onto my paper towel. I'm going to mix a little bit more of that dark color. And I'm just going to drop it into the wet area. And it's okay if some of the white of the paper shines through. It just makes them look fuzzy. What we're going to do is stripes. Just right onto dry paper. Bump those right up to his yellow stripes. Now I want it to have a little bit of a highlight there, so I'm drying my brush off, and I'm just going to pick up some of this pigment to let that white of the paper shine through, so that it gives him a little bit of a curve. It makes him look like he has a little curve. It gives him a highlight, and then we'll just put even more of the dark mixture down here so that you'll know that's a shadow. And the same thing on his little bottom here. I hear you, boy. I think he's telling me to come feed him. I'm going to feed him after I finish this. I think they need some food. And just give him his little antenna here. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more of this just to lighten it up some. Got this too wet, so I'm just going to keep picking up some of this water and pigment here on his little tail. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now while that is going, I'm going to take some of this brown, this like an umber brown, and mix it into my yellows, because I need a little bit of a darker color here. And then I'm just going to do some little tick marks, some little tiny brush strokes to make it look like it's fuzzy. And I'm going to concentrate those down toward the bottom, because I want that bottom to be more in shadow. And just kind of put a few more in there. Just make him look fuzzy. There. We'll let that dry a little bit, then we'll come back to our black mixture, and we'll just do his little legs in little sections, just like we did the ladybugs. So we're just doing some sort of like sausage shapes, and then little points at the end. Like so. And then he's got another little leg coming here. on the other side. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more of that black right here under him just to darken that up. And then he's got a leg here on the other side of his body kind of coming down. Oh, that's a lot of leg. He's leggy. We got a lot of legs. Now I'm going to take this dark mixture and I'm going straight onto dry paper because I want it to be darker and I want it to stay where I put it. I'm going to leave a little highlight and there we go. We've got his eye painted in. These are some of the easiest little insects. Now for his wings, I'm going to wet those down. Just wet those down. And I'm going to take some of this gray. It's turned into gray where it's really watery. And I'm just going to drop it in there. Just like that. And I'm going to take some of the yellow because of course some of that yellow of his body is going to be shining through because his wings are transparent. So I just put a little bit of that yellow in there because you can see the reflection. And now we are going to work on the other bee. We're going to let him dry. We're not done. We're not done with our bee and any of our little insects, but we're getting there. So some more black mixture. Here we go. We're going to get our blue. We're going to get our brown. Pick up some of that red. You don't really need the red, but. And I'm just for this little area right here that's sort of in between his head. I'm just going to go ahead and just do that really dark. Right onto dry paper. We are going to go ahead and put in his legs. And we're just doing just like little marks for that. We're not. There. Now we're going to work on his little head here. And we are going to work on his stripe, his black stripes. So I'm going to do a really watery sort of grayish stripe first. And then I'm going to come back in and just on the edges, I'm going to add more of that black mixture while it's still wet. Let that blend together. And we want that to be a little bit lighter, so it's like the highlight. I'm also going to come up here and pick up some of the pigment here while it's still wet. This is called lifting if you're new to watercolor. You just lift up a little bit of that pigment while it's still wet with your brush so that you can have a little lighter area. I'm also going to do the same thing with the wings. I'm going to wet those down with some clean water, just like we did our other little bee. And then just put in some of that gray mixture, that really watered down black mixture. It's just the brown and the blue mixed together, and it's really watered down. So I'm going to put that in there. Then I'm going to come to my darker brownish yellow here. And I'm just going to add some little marks. So he's looking fuzzy. Same with his back. Just going to add some little fuzzies in there. Make him look fuzzy. And then I'm going to get the regular yellow. And in the lighter areas, put some yellow. That's not dark enough. Let's get the warmer yellow. And let's do some marks in the highlighted area. I don't know if you can see them on camera, but I can see them. So now he's looking fuzzy. We'll give him 2 eyes, 1 on each side, with just some of the darker paint. Give him a little antennas sticking out there. There. And we will put a little bit of yellow right here, just by the edges, so some of that yellow is reflecting into his wings from his body. Alright, now we will take some of this black mixture and just do a few little lines here and there, just to make his black parts look fuzzy too. We want him to be fuzzy. We can bring some of that black into the yellow, break up that straight line there, and give it a little bit more of a look of fuzziness. Here, I got a little fuzzy bee. Now, let's see what I want to do. Is this dry yet? We can go and just take some of this black, and we can just sort of draw some veins on his wings, just using the very top of the brush, like the very tippy toe part of the brush. Do the same thing on the other side. There. And we will do the same thing on this one. It's not all the way dry yet, so it's not going to be as crisp because that yellow part is not dry. But it's okay. Now we're gonna let that dry. And I think what I'm gonna do is use I am gonna use my white pen here. And I'm just gonna do some highlights here and there. Make sure that your butterfly is dry though before you start making your highlights, because if it's not dry, your pen, you're not even going to be able to see your pen work in there. And we can do the same. We can actually do some, let's do some spots on him. And do some spots on this wing. We can do a little bit of highlights here. There. And we can do a little bit of fuzzy highlights on him. Here and there, just make him more fuzzy looking. And just give some highlights. And it can be messy. Give him some highlights on his eyes so you can see his eyes. If you want to put some on his little legs, you can do that too. We're going to make some little highlights here on our ladybug. There. Maybe a little highlight here. Put some highlights on the little dots if you want to. There, so there's 3 little garden insects that you can do pretty easily. Add them to your florals. They don't have to be complicated. I hope that you have enjoyed this. Look at those. I hope you have enjoyed this, and thank you for watching. And a big shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much. And don't forget to go over there and get your outline drawing and whatever else that your tier that you might be will get as bonus content. All right, see you next time.